The night on the colony planet Kyrene was quiet, except for the sound of humming machines inside the damaged alien ship. Evan, a human engineer, was working alone, fixing broken circuits and damaged panels. The air smelled of burnt metal and strange chemicals, but he was used to it. His hands moved quickly, but his mind was wandering. It had been 3 weeks since the battle that left this alien craft half buried in the dirt. He was told to repair it for research, but he knew the job would take weeks more. As he tightened a bolt, Evan suddenly felt it, a strange tingling on the back of his neck. Like someone was watching him, he turned his head slowly, and his heart skipped a beat. Standing in the shadows was a tall figure. At first, he thought it was a soldier from the alien crew, but then she stepped into the light. She was unlike any alien he had seen before. Her skin was pale with a faint silver glow, and her eyes shimmered like liquid metal. Her long hair floated as if moved by a gentle wind. Even though the air inside was still, she wore a slim, dark suit with glowing patterns that pulsed faintly. But the strangest thing was her expression, calm, unreadable, and then she spoke. Her voice smooth and clear. "I can hear your thoughts," she said. Evan froze. His mind jumped in panic. What did she mean? Was she joking? But deep inside, he felt she was telling the truth. Before he could speak, she tilted her head slightly. "Yes, I'm telling the truth," she added, as if answering his unspoken question. Evan's eyes widened. He realized she was answering things he hadn't said out loud. He tried to clear his mind, but it was impossible. And then, in the worst possible moment, he accidentally thought about how beautiful her eyes were. Her lips curved into a small smirk. She didn't seem angry, just amused. "Humans," she whispered softly, "always so shy when their thoughts are caught." Evan's face turned red. I didn't mean," he began, but she interrupted. "You didn't mean to think it, but you did," she said. Her smirk deepened, as if she was enjoying his embarrassment. Evan quickly tried to focus on work, turning back to the panel, but she didn't move. She stayed there, watching, listening. The silence felt heavy. Every time Evan's mind wandered, she would react. If he thought about asking her name, she would answer without him speaking. If he wondered what she wanted, she would say, "You'll see." Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. "What do you want from me?" he asked out loud. She stepped closer, the glow from her eyes brightening. "You'll help me," she said simply. Evan frowned. "Help you with what?" he asked. Her answer was a calm but chilling, "Survival." Before he could ask more, a low rumble shook the ship. The floor vibrated under his boots, and a distant alarm began to beep. She turned her head slightly, as if listening to something far away. "They found me," she said. Evan blinked. "Who found you?" he asked. She didn't answer directly. Instead, she walked toward him, closing the distance between them. Her presence felt strange, powerful yet gentle. When she was close enough, she lifted her hand and placed it lightly on the side of his head. Evan gasped. In an instant, his mind was filled with flashes, bright explosions, alien soldiers fighting, a shadowy figure with glowing red eyes hunting her. He stumbled back, holding his head. "What was that?" he asked. "Memories," she replied. "So you understand the danger." Another vibration shook the ship, louder this time. Evan's instincts screamed at him to run, but she grabbed his arm firmly. "If you run, you'll die," she said. "Stay close to me, and you might live." There was no arrogance in her tone, just certainty. Her silver eyes locked with his, and for a moment, he believed her completely. The alarms grew louder. The sound of approaching engines filled the air outside. Evan's heart pounded. This was not the night he expected. One moment, he was just fixing the ship. The next, he was standing beside a mind-reading alien girl. And from the way she smirked at him again, he knew his thoughts were far from private. The alarms inside the alien ship kept beeping, each sound sharper than the last. Evan stood frozen for a moment, unsure whether to follow the alien girl or run for his life. Her silver eyes stayed on him, as if she already knew which choice he would make. "You're coming with me," she said, not as a request, but as a statement. Evan opened his mouth to argue, but then realized there was no point. She would hear every argument before he even spoke it. They moved through the narrow corridors of the damaged ship. Her steps were quick but soundless, like a shadow gliding across the floor. Evan followed, his boots echoing softly as they passed the control room. He caught himself thinking about how the strange patterns on her suit seemed to glow more brightly. When she was alert, "You notice everything, don't you?" she said without looking back. Evan winced. "Stop reading my mind," he muttered. "I can't." She replied simply, "It's like you can't stop breathing." They reached a hatch at the rear of the ship. She pressed her hand against a glowing panel, and the metal door slid open with a hiss. Cool night air rushed in, carrying the scent of the alien jungle outside. Evan hesitated at the threshold. "Where are we going?" he asked. "Somewhere safer," she answered, though her smirk told him she wasn't being entirely honest. As they walked under the dark sky, Evan tried to focus his thoughts on practical things like navigation, like the fastest route to the human camp, but every time his mind wandered to her appearance or her voice, she reacted. When he thought her hair looked like strands of silver in the starlight, her lips curved upward. When he remembered the way she smirked inside the ship, her pace slowed, almost as if she enjoyed dragging the moment out. "This is going to drive me insane," he muttered. "It might," she said. Clearly entertained, they moved deeper into the jungle. The ground was soft with layers of glowing moss, and strange plant stalks swayed gently as if following their movement. From somewhere in the distance, a creature let out a low haunting call. Evan shivered. "You don't scare easy," she remarked. "I've been through worse," he said. "That's not true," she replied instantly. "You've been through dangerous things." "Yes, but you've never faced this." Evan narrowed his eyes. "Then, tell me what this is," he demanded. She looked at him briefly, then away. "If I told you now, you'd just think about running," she said. Evan clenched his jaw, frustrated. She wasn't wrong if he knew what was coming. Maybe he would think twice about staying with her. But something in him wanted to stay, even though every instinct told him to keep his distance. They crossed a small stream, the water glowing faintly under the alien moonlight. Evan's mind betrayed him again, imagining her as some kind of untouchable queen of this world. Her smirk appeared instantly. "You really can't control what your mind shows." "Me, can you?" she said. "I told you to stop," he snapped. "And I told you I can't," she replied. She didn't seem offended at all. If anything, she looked more curious about him than before. After a while, they reached a ridge overlooking the jungle. From here, the distant lights of the human colony flickered faintly. Evan thought about running toward it, about escaping her, but before he could even take a step, she said, "If you go there now, you'll lead them straight to your people." "Who's them?" he asked again. Her smirk faded slightly, her expression turning serious. "They are hunters," she said. "They won't stop until they find me." "Or you." Evan felt a chill in his spine. "Why me?" he asked. "Because you saw me," she said quietly. "And because now your mind holds pieces of mine." Evan didn't understand, but the weight of her words was enough to keep him silent. For a while, they made camp under a massive tree with twisting roots. Evan sat down, watching her as she moved with graceful precision, scanning their surroundings without making a sound. When he thought about how dangerous she looked, she smirked. Again, when he thought about how beautiful she was, the smirk grew wider. Finally he sighed. "You're impossible to be around." "And yet," she said, sitting across from him, "you're still here." In the silence that followed, Evan realized something. It wasn't just her ability to read minds that kept him there. It was the mystery, the way she seemed both dangerous and strangely protective. And maybe, just maybe, he didn't want her to stop smirking at him. Far away beyond the jungle, faint red lights began to move. Through the night, the hunters were coming. ****. The night air on Karen felt heavier now. Evan sat beneath the massive tree roots, his back resting against the cool bark. The alien girl, still without giving her name, was crouched a few feet away, her silver eyes scanning the jungle like a predator watching for prey. He wanted to believe they were safe for the moment. But the way she moved told him otherwise. A strange hum drifted through the air, low at first, then growing louder. Evan's skin prickled. It wasn't the sound of wildlife, it was mechanical. "They're close," she said suddenly, not looking at him. Her voice was calm, but her mind-reading eyes told him she was already planning their next move. "Who exactly are they?" Evan asked again, his voice low. This time she actually answered. "Hunters," she said. "Not from my people, not from yours. They serve no home, no law. They hunt minds." Evan frowned. "Hunt minds? What does that even mean?" "They feed on thought, memory. The soul inside your head," she said softly. Her words sank into him like cold water. The humming grew sharper, turning into a layered, insect-like buzz. From the tree line below, faint red orbs of light appeared, weaving between the shadows. "They track by thought," she added. "If you think about where to run, they will know." Evan blinked in disbelief. "How am I supposed to not think about running?" He whispered. "You can't." "But I can hide you," she said, standing to her full height. She placed a hand lightly against his forehead. Instantly, a wave of cool numbness swept through him. It was like his thoughts were wrapped in fog. He could still feel them, but they were distant, muffled. Her silver eyes locked on his. "They won't hear you now," she said, "but it won't last long." They began moving again, weaving between thick trunks and curling vines. The jungle here pulsed with strange life plants that glowed when brushed, trees that seemed to whisper in the wind. Evan stumbled once, but her hand shot out, catching his arm before he could fall. He thought about how strong her grip was, and she smirked without breaking stride. "You really can't stop," she murmured, amused. "You're inside my head." "Of course I can't stop," he replied. "That's why I like you," she said, her smirk fading into focus as the red lights below grew brighter. A sharp click echoed in the darkness, followed by another. Evan glanced over his shoulder and saw shapes moving, tall, thin figures, almost skeletal, their limbs too long for their bodies. Each one had a faint red glow where their eyes should be. They moved without sound, except for the electric buzz that grew louder as they approached. Evan's heart raced. She noticed immediately. "Slow your mind," she whispered. "They'll taste fear before they see you." He tried, but his thoughts were chaos, images of being caught, of those red eyes closing in, of her being taken. All of it swirled inside his head. Her hand brushed his temple again, calming the storm. This time, her touch lingered a moment longer than necessary. "Better," she said softly. They reached a narrow ravine, the walls slick with moss. Without warning, she leapt down into the shadows below. Landing silently, Evan followed less gracefully, sliding on the damp surface. She caught him again before he fell hard. "You humans are loud," she teased. "I didn't exactly grow up in a jungle," he muttered. Her smirk returned for just a second before fading, her eyes narrowing at the sound above. The hunters had reached the edge of the ravine. Their glowing red eyes scanned the darkness. Evan held his breath. He thought about staying still, about becoming invisible, then realized with a chill if he was thinking about it, they might sense it. Her hand gripped his shoulder, and he felt the mental fog wrap around him again. "They're leaving," she whispered. It wasn't entirely true. Two of the hunters turned away, but one remained, its head cocking slowly. It seemed to sniff the air. Evan's pulse pounded in his ears. Then, after a long tense moment, the creature followed the others, disappearing into the trees. When the last red light was gone, Evan finally breathed. He looked at her. "You weren't lying." "They were inside my head," he said. "They would have taken everything. Left nothing of you," she replied quietly. Her silver eyes softened for the first time. "You saved me," he said without thinking. She tilted her head. Not yet. She replied, "They will come again." Far away, the mechanical hum began to fade. But deep inside, Evan knew this wasn't over. If anything, the hunt had only just begun. And for reasons he didn't fully understand, he found himself less afraid of the hunters, and more afraid of what this alien girl could make him feel. The jungle was quiet again, but Evan knew it was the kind of quiet that never lasted. The alien girl, still keeping her name a secret, stood at the edge of the ravine, her silver eyes fixed on the path ahead. "They'll circle back," she said calmly. "They always do." Evan glanced behind them, imagining those red-eyed hunters moving through the trees like shadows. "Then maybe we should stop standing here," he muttered. She smirked faintly. Finally, a thought worth following, they climbed out of the ravine, moving quickly under the cover of twisted branches and glowing vines. The moon above was brighter now, casting silver light across the ground. Every step they took seemed louder than it should have been. Evan tried to match her silent, fluid movements, but his boots crunched on leaves and snapped small twigs. "You're heavy-footed," she whispered, not looking back. "I'm human," he whispered back. "We weren't made for sneaking through alien jungles." Her smirk returned for a second. "Maybe I'll teach you." The jungle around them seemed alive in more ways than one. Long vines shifted like snakes, leaves closed and opened as if breathing. In the distance, the low hum returned, faint, but growing. "They've split up," she said suddenly. Evan frowned. "How do you know?" "I can feel their minds brushing against mine," she replied. "They're looking for gaps in our path." That sent a chill through him. They weren't just hunting them physically, they were thinking hunters. They began weaving through narrow gaps between massive roots. Sometimes she would stop suddenly, tilting her head as if listening to something Evan couldn't hear. Other times, she would pull him sharply in a different direction without explaining. At first, it annoyed him, but after hearing the faint mechanical clicking in the distance, he decided to trust her instincts. A sudden rustle made him freeze from the darkness. One of the hunters emerged, tall and thin, its red eyes glowing faintly. Its movements were smooth, almost too smooth, like water flowing in the wrong direction. Evan's thoughts screamed run. She grabbed his wrist immediately. "Don't think that," she whispered sharply. The hunter paused, its head tilting unnaturally. Evan could feel it like invisible fingers brushing against the edges of his mind. Then, without warning, the alien girl threw a small metal sphere onto the ground. It burst into a cloud of shimmering particles that spread through the air like dust. The hunter twitched, its red eyes flickering. Then it backed away into the shadows. "What was that?" Evan asked in a whisper. "A thought jammer," she said. "It scrambles their senses for a short time." They didn't stop moving. The jungle grew denser, the air warmer and heavier. Somewhere nearby, a stream bubbled softly, and Evan realized they were heading toward it. She crouched low and motioned for him to follow. The stream's water glowed faintly blue under the moonlight, and small fish darted beneath the surface. She led him into the water, moving upstream. "The water hides our trail," she explained, "and our thoughts travel slower here." For the next half hour, they waded through the stream in silence. The cold water numbed Evan's legs, but it also made him feel strangely hidden. Finally, they stepped out onto a mossy bank. Above them, the trees thinned, revealing a clear stretch of sky filled with countless stars. For a brief moment, it almost felt peaceful. "You're thinking about home," she said suddenly. Evan glanced at her. "Maybe." Her smirk returned, but softer this time. "You won't get there if you stop now." A sharp buzzing interrupted them. Louder this time, from the tree line behind, 3 red lights appeared, moving fast. "They found our trail," she said, her voice still calm, but Evan could hear the urgency in her steps now. They ran, weaving through the undergrowth, ducking under low branches. The hunters moved faster than he expected. Every time he looked back, they were closer, their long limbs covering impossible distances. At one point, they burst into a clearing lit by clusters of glowing flowers. Evan almost slowed down, distracted by the strange beauty, but she yanked him forward. "Don't look. Keep moving." The hunters entered the clearing seconds later. One of them let out a low, vibrating hiss that made Evan's teeth ache. "They're calling the rest," she warned. They darted into another stretch of dense forest. Evan's lungs burned, his legs ached, but she never slowed. It was as if she could run forever. Every time his thoughts drifted toward stopping, she would push him onward. Finally, they reached the base of a massive cliff, its surface smooth and dark. "We climb," she said simply. "You're kidding," he replied. Looking up at the sheer wall, her smirk returned. "I'll go first. You just follow." She began climbing with inhuman speed, her hands and feet finding perfect grips on the rock. Evan followed, his muscles screaming in protest. Below them, the hunters reached the cliff base, their glowing eyes following every movement. One of them began climbing as well, its long limbs reaching disturbingly far. "Faster," she urged. Evan didn't need to be told twice. By the time they reached the top, his arms felt like they were on fire. She grabbed his wrist and pulled him up the final ledge. The hunters stopped halfway up, their red eyes watching as the two disappeared into the trees beyond. When they finally stopped to rest, Evan collapsed against a tree, gasping for breath. "You didn't say they could climb," he panted. She smirked. "If I told you everything, you'd think too much about it." Somehow, even with the danger all around, that smirk still got to him, and somewhere deep inside, he wondered if that was her plan all along. The night wind at the top of the cliff was colder. Evan leaned back against a thick tree, his chest rising and falling as he tried to catch his breath. The alien girl stood a few steps away, her silver eyes still scanning the forest below. The red-eyed hunters had disappeared into the shadows, but Evan knew they weren't gone for good. "You can rest for a few minutes," she said, finally turning toward him. "Gee, thanks," he muttered, rubbing his aching arms. Her lips curved into that familiar smirk. "You survived better than I thought you would." Evan shook his head. "I'm still alive because you keep pulling me out of trouble." "You think it's all me?" she asked, tilting her head. "You've done more than you realize." Evan frowned. "What do you mean?" "You've distracted them," she said. "Your mind moves differently than mine. It keeps them guessing." He blinked. "So I'm just bait?" "Not just bait," she said with a hint of amusement. "You're a partner in survival. Even if you don't know it yet." They moved away from the cliff edge, heading deeper into the higher ground of the forest. The air here felt different, less damp, more open. Evan noticed the way her suit's glowing lines pulsed faintly as she walked. He wondered if it was connected to her abilities. "It is," she said suddenly, answering his thought. "It draws from my energy. The more I use my mind, the brighter it becomes." He glanced at her. "So you can't use it forever. No one can use power forever," she replied simply. That thought lingered with him. He had assumed she was unstoppable, but maybe she was just as breakable as anyone else, and that realization made him uneasy after an hour of silent walking. They stopped at a cluster of tall stone pillars jutting out from the ground like the ribs of some ancient creature. "This will hide us from their scans," she said, touching one of the stones. "How?" he asked. "They're made of a mineral that bends thought." "Even mine," she explained. Evan sat down, leaning against one of the pillars. For the first time since meeting her, he felt like they could actually talk without running. "So," he began, "are you ever going to tell me your name?" She looked at him for a long moment before answering. "Lyra," she said softly. Evan repeated it under his breath. Her smirk appeared again. "You like the sound of it." He rolled his eyes. "Don't get too proud." "Too late," she said with a faint laugh. The sound of her laughter was rare, and it did something strange to him. It made the jungle feel less hostile, even if only for a moment. "You've been inside my head since we met," he said. "Feels only fair if I get inside yours." Her expression grew thoughtful. "That's dangerous," she said. "My mind is not a place for humans to wander." "I'm already part of this," he replied. "Might as well understand it." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she sat down across from him, the silver glow of her eyes dimming slightly. "You're not afraid of me," she said quietly. "Should I be?" He asked. "Yes," she said, "but you're not. And I can't decide if that makes you brave or foolish." "Maybe both," he said with a small grin. That grin earned him another smirk from her, but it felt different this time, less teasing, more curious. The night passed slowly, with distant hums from the hunters echoing faintly through the trees. At one point, Evan almost drifted into sleep in the hazy edge of his mind. He thought about her standing guard, about the strange trust he felt in her presence. When he opened his eyes again, she was still there, her gaze fixed on the distance. "You were dreaming," she said. "Your thoughts became softer." He smirked faintly. "Anything embarrassing?" "Nothing I haven't already seen," she replied with a quiet laugh. By morning, the first pale light filtered through the canopy. They ate in silence small dried rations from Evan's pack. She didn't seem to need much food, taking only a small piece before handing the rest back. "Your body is weaker than mine," she said. "You'll need more than I do." "Is that your way of caring about me?" he asked. "Don't get used to it," she replied. But the smirk gave her away. Before they left the stone pillars, she stood in front of him. "I need you to understand something," she said seriously. "If they catch me, they will take everything in my mind. And everything in yours." Evan met her gaze. "Then I guess we make sure they don't catch us." Her smirk was gone now, replaced by something almost like respect. "You might actually survive this," she said softly. They began moving again, this time side by side, instead of one leading the other. Evan noticed she didn't keep as much distance between them now. Once, when his boots slipped on loose soil, her hand shot out to steady him. She didn't let go right away, and for a moment, neither of them said anything. When she finally released him, the smirk returned. "Don't read into it," she said. "Too late," he replied, and this time she didn't argue. Somewhere beyond the trees, a low hum returned. The hunters were still out there, but for the first time, Evan felt like they weren't just running. They were moving together, and that made all the difference. Asterisk. The forest floor trembled as the low hum of the hunters grew stronger. Evan and Lyra had been moving for hours, their pace steady but urgent. The air was warmer here, carrying a faint metallic taste that made Evan's mouth dry. Lyra slowed suddenly, raising a hand for silence. "They're closer than I expected," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Evan scanned the trees but saw nothing, only shadows shifting in the breeze. "They're splitting up again," Lyra continued, her silver eyes narrowing. "They want to trap us. Then let's not get trapped," Evan muttered. Her smirk flickered briefly, but this time it didn't linger. "We'll need to fight," she said simply. Evan froze. "Fight? With what?" "With your tools." "And my mind," she replied. They found a small clearing surrounded by thick roots and boulders. "This will give us cover," Lyra said, kneeling to trace shapes into the dirt. Evan watched her draw strange symbols, each one glowing faintly before fading into the ground. "What are those?" he asked. "Mind anchors," she explained. "They slow the thoughts of anyone who steps over them." Evan rummaged through his pack, pulling out a welding torch, a coil of wire, and a small handheld cutter. "Not exactly weapons," he said. "They will be," Lyra replied, her tone certain. The hum grew louder. Shadows shifted at the edge of the clearing, and Evan caught the faint glow of red eyes moving between the trees. "3 of them," Lyra said. "The others are close. But these will test us first." Evan's stomach tightened. "Why do I feel like this is more about testing me than stopping them?" he asked. "Because it is," she answered without hesitation. Before he could respond, the first hunter stepped into the clearing. It moved slowly at first, scanning the ground. Then it stepped over one of Lyra's glowing symbols, and its head twitched unnaturally. The movement slowed, as if it was wading through heavy water. "That's our opening," Lyra said. She moved forward, her steps silent, her eyes locked on the creature's mind. Evan could feel something like the air itself tightening around them. The hunter jerked its head toward her, its red eyes flashing. Another hunter emerged from the left, this one moving faster. Evan's instincts took over. He flicked on the welding torch and sent a blinding burst of light toward it. The hunter recoiled, its sensors overloaded. "Nice," Lyra called out without looking back. Evan's heart pounded. He had actually slowed one down. The third hunter appeared, moving in from behind them. Lyra turned sharply, her silver eyes burning brighter. Evan saw the creature hesitate, its limbs twitching as if caught in an invisible grip. But holding it seemed to drain her. Her breathing grew heavier, and the glow of her suit dimmed. "Evan!" She shouted. He didn't think, he just acted. He grabbed the coil of wire from his pack, looped it around a heavy rock, and swung it toward the creature's legs. The wire caught, and with a sharp pull, the hunter crashed to the ground. Lyra stepped forward, placing her palm on the fallen hunter's head. A sharp pulse of light shot from her hand, and the creature went still. She turned back to Evan, her expression unreadable. "You adapt quickly," she said. "Or maybe I just don't want to die," he replied. Her smirk returned faintly. "Both can be true." The first hunter broke free from her earlier trap. Its movements faster now, it lunged toward Evan. He dropped the torch, diving out of the way. Before it could turn, Lyra's hand shot out, gripping the back of its head. Evan watched in shock as the creature convulsed, its red eyes flickering. Before going dark, she released it, breathing heavily. "That's two," she said, though her voice carried fatigue. The last hunter, the one Evan had blinded, was recovering. It straightened slowly, its movements jerky. Lyra stepped forward again, but Evan grabbed her arm. "You're burning yourself out," he said. Her silver eyes met his. "And if I stop, it will kill us both," she replied. Without waiting for him to argue, she moved toward it. This time, Evan joined her, swinging the wire again. The hunter blocked it, but the distraction was enough. Lyra pressed her palm to its chest, sending another pulse through its body. The creature went limp, collapsing into the dirt. Silence filled the clearing, broken only by the sound of Evan's heavy breathing. Lyra stood still for a moment, her shoulders rising and falling slowly. When she finally looked at him, her smirk returned, though it was weaker. "You're not terrible in a fight," she said. "You either," he replied, unable to hide his grin. She gave a short laugh. "Careful, I might start thinking you like me." "Too late," he said without thinking. Her eyes lingered on him for a heartbeat longer before she turned away. They moved out of the clearing, leaving the silent hunter bodies behind. As they walked, Evan noticed she kept closer to him than before. At one point, her hand brushed his, and though she didn't comment, he knew she had felt the thought that crossed his mind. By the faint smirk on her lips, she didn't seem to mind, but deep down, Evan knew this wasn't the end of the hunt. The others were still out there, and when they came, the battle wouldn't just be for survival, it would be a test of trust. The air was still after the fight, but Evan knew it was the kind of stillness that came before another storm. Lyra walked beside him, her steps slower now, the glow in her suit dimmer than he had seen before. She was strong, more than strong, but the constant battles and mind work had taken their toll. "Are you all right?" he asked, glancing at her. "I will be," she said simply, though her voice carried the weight of exhaustion. They followed a narrow path leading upward through the high forest. The ground here was dry and scattered with strange glass-like stones that crunched underfoot. Evan looked ahead, spotting faint lights in the distance. "What's that?" he asked. "A transport point," she said. "If we can reach it, I can leave this planet." Evan's chest tightened at her words. "So, that's it then? You're just going to leave?" She didn't answer immediately, her eyes fixed on the glowing horizon. They moved in silence for a while. Evan's mind was a mess of thoughts, memories of the last 2 days, the danger, the fights. Her smirks, her laughter, she caught them all, of course. "You think too much," she said. Quietly, "And you never think out loud," he replied. That earned him the faintest of smirks. "Some thoughts are worth keeping," she said. As they reached a rocky outcrop, the faint hum returned in the distance. Evan's heart sank. "They're still following," he said. "They won't stop," Lyra replied. "Not until they're sure I'm gone." She turned to him, her silver eyes catching the first rays of dawn. "Once we reach the transport, they won't be able to follow me," she said. "But they may still come for you." Evan straightened. "Then I'll make sure they don't." The hum grew louder, and soon red lights appeared below, weaving between the trees. "They're faster than I thought," she said, her tone sharper now. She reached into a pouch on her belt, pulling out 2 small silver discs. "Take one," she said, handing it to him. "What is it?" "A pulse mine. Throw it when they get too close." Evan nodded, gripping the disc tightly. The final stretch to the transport point was a long winding slope covered in jagged rock. The red lights grew brighter as the hunters climbed after them. Halfway up, one of the hunters broke from the group. Moving ahead of the others, Evan didn't think he threw the pulse mine. It landed at the creature's feet with a sharp crack, sending out a wave of light. The hunter collapsed, twitching. Before going still, Lyra glanced at him with the faintest smile. "Not bad." They reached the top of the slope, and the transport platform came into view, a circle of glowing blue symbols carved into the rock. In the center, a faint beam of light shimmered upward. "This will take me to safety," she said. Stepping toward it, Evan followed slowly, his chest heavy with the thought that this might be the last time he saw her. "You should come with me," she said suddenly. Turning to face him, he froze. "Is that even possible?" "Yes," she said, "but you'll be leaving everything you know behind." Before he could answer, the remaining hunters emerged from the slope, their red eyes locked on the platform. "They're here," he said. Lyra stepped between him and the creatures, her silver eyes blazing. "Stay behind me," she ordered. The hunters advanced, their limbs moving unnaturally fast. Lyra's hand shot out, sending a ripple of invisible force through the air. 2 of them stumbled, but the third pushed forward. Evan grabbed a loose rock and hurled it at the creature, slowing it just enough for Lyra to strike again. This time, the force sent it crashing into the ground. Motionless, the hum faded, replaced by the quiet hum of the transport platform. Lyra turned to him, her breathing steady again. "It's time," she said. Evan stared at her, part of him wanting to step onto the platform, the other part knowing he couldn't leave his world behind. "I can't," he said finally. Her expression softened, and for a moment, the smirk disappeared, replaced by something warmer. "You've kept me alive," she said, "and I don't forget debts." She stepped onto the platform, the blue light wrapping around her. Evan's thoughts shouted things he didn't say, wishes for her to stay, to come back, to not vanish from his life. She caught every single one of them, of course. And just before the light took her, she smirked that same teasing, knowing smirk from the first moment they met. "Maybe one day I'll come back," she said, her voice carrying through the hum. Then the light flashed and she was gone. Evan stood alone on the rocky peak, the dawn sun rising behind him. The jungle below was quiet, but he knew it wouldn't stay that way for long. Somewhere out there, the hunters would return, and maybe, just maybe, so would she. Asterisk.